Hello and welcome to AFK Sidequest. I'm your host, Rob Thurston, and joining me today in our prison break from Tedium, I have Nick Hatfield. So Nick, what have you brought for us today?
Well, today, Rob, I have brought the Great Alcatraz Escape. You're either prisoners or you're a warden. Gang leaders are going to send out their cronies to collect items, get some rafts, get to freedom, while the warden is just trying to stop them doing that. So they're going to be running around, nabbing crooks out of jail, throwing them back into solitary and stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways you can play it, and depending on how many players there are and what kind of game mode you're playing, it can change up quite a lot.
How do you actually play it?
To move your guys, you'll roll some dice. That's the same for wardens.
Okay.
You'll then move your guys around. The criminals are trying to escape from the wardens and gather the materials they'll need for their breakout. When one of your gang members goes onto a location that can house an item, they'll collect a token, put it underneath the little piece, and that token has access to that piece. They can take it back to your cell where it can come into your stash, where your gang leader can distribute them out to wherever they need the piece.
So you can keep it if you want to go straight out with it, but you'll kind of want to have it as an stash. You can use it wherever you want to.
If the warden catches someone who has a token underneath them, the warden gets to confiscate all of that stuff.
Why would they want to confiscate it?
If the warden collects enough stuff, they can get things called warden cards, where you trade in a set number of tokens to get a card which will have a special power that you can use once. The warden cards can be used to do a lot of things, so you could release the dogs and hunt down the prisoners, or you can set the searchlight in a direction. You could shoot somebody if you're in the right position.
Very good.
The gang leaders have an equivalent called gang cards. They're normally a little less potent.
Can you catch a prisoner pretty much wherever they are? You just literally run a guard up to them and that's it, you've got them?
So there are some restrictions. In the inner prison, there are only a certain amount of guards allowed to be in it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the warden's just going to fill the entire thing with them. The other restriction is if a prisoner is in a hiding spot, if a guard walks up to them, they won't be able to see them. But prisoners can contest each other for areas. You can try to move through me, and I can decide then whether I want to stop you or not. Most of the hiding spots will be in corners, so the only time you're going to be coming into those hiding spots are when you want that hiding spot, so you'll try and fight me. Then one of us will get turfed out to the medbay. The interesting thing is, if one gang leader sends one of their cronies out and they hop a wall with some rope, and then they go and unlock a door, and then they go and use wire cutters to cut through the fence, another gang leader can just follow that path.
Oh, so you could be making your escape, but you're also opening the way for other people on the board.
Which, to a degree, is good because you want a little bit of cooperation, but only one guy can get out. It's an almost versus with a little team element. The warden, on the other hand, can't use these escape routes because they're very official people. You don't see policemen climbing ropes.
I don't know, if I saw somebody escaping, I probably would go through the fence.
Unfortunately, you're bound by the rules of Alcatraz, so you'll have to walk around.
Damn it.
But the wardens can also collect the tokens, and they'll go back to the warden's stash to trade in for cards, and that means that anyone trying to use that escape route can't, because it's not there anymore. The wardens do have a little advantage in that they can move their pieces from guard spots, which are placed all over the map.
So how does the actual escape part of it work? I'm guessing that comes right at the very end of the game, then.
You'll want to gather some buoyant material, and you'll need 3 pieces of this. You'll take that buoyant material to a shore point, and then you can spend a full turn with one of your guys there making that buoyant material into a raft. Then the next turn, they'll jump into the water with their raft, and they'll slowly make their way out to sea. The warden can do some things to stop them, but they can't just send a guy swimming out after them or anything. They'll have some cards which will affect it, so like a searchlight can, or they could shoot somebody on a raft, or they could send out a patrol boat and things like that.
I think we're playing story mode, which is kind of the base out of the box version of the game. Are there other game modes to play?
There are 3 other modes. Generally, they're a bit more concise. You have the arcade mode, which has a much shorter time, but it kind of assumes you've already done the gathering. The story mode can take quite a while, so the arcade mode's a good version if you just have, maybe you've got a smaller time slot to play it in. You have the riot mode. The gang leaders will have all of their guys out. The warden can send out killer guards to essentially just go and
kill someone.
Pretty much, yeah. So there's no solitary for if one of those guard catches you. You're just kind of off. There is also the team mode. The gang leaders will be split into 2 teams, rather than everyone kind of competing with each other, but not quite competing. It's a bit more cooperative, so if you've got like a varying skill set, you could potentially have like 2 experienced people playing with 2 inexperienced people.
Yeah.
Kind of bounce the teams out a little bit.
Okay, so with that rundown of the rules, we're going to go away and give this game a try. We'll be back with you in a couple of moments to tell you just what we thought. And we are back. There has been an escape from Alcatraz prison, and the warden is going to very shortly be fired. As the warden, that really wasn't a very good thing for me.
It's not a surprise though, is it?
No, not at all, not at all. I've got to say, it was a really, really close game actually, and I'm actually surprised at just how down to the wire we got when we played it. I actually really enjoyed it come the end of it. There are things that I have issues with, but as the game goes, I actually had a good time playing it, which is a really good thing.
I mean, you've pretty much summarized my opinions in it there. There's a few things that I don't necessarily gel with, but overall I really enjoyed the game. It has been really close each time. Even when someone's won, it's felt like someone else was close to.
Just literally that close, literally a turn in it, right?
It's always been like a fraction. In this, your plan can completely change by necessity in a turn. You can be planning something 5 turns ahead, and it doesn't work out. Someone will do something and it'll just screw everything over.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're out of it. Just because your plan isn't working out doesn't mean you can't kind of piggyback on someone else.
Yeah, you kind of take the opportunity where you can and you go for it, and more often than not, that works out better than the original plan would have anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
There is one thing I have noticed, especially from the Warden's perspective. There is this kind of, maybe in the second third of the game, there's this little bit of a lull where everybody's ready to move and they're waiting for somebody to go first because they know the Warden's going to jump on them as soon as they do. And as the Warden, you're kind of watching everybody else thinking, who's going to make the move first? And how can I get the other two when it happens?
It's almost like a draw-off, really.
Yeah, it really is. You've mentioned there are some things that you didn't agree with and others that you did. What was it you didn't get along with here?
Personally, I think that there was a bit too much variance in how much you could move each turn. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but for the background of the games that I normally play, it was a little bit randomized.
Yes.
This did lead to some good elements of like, you'd have a turn planned out and it wouldn't necessarily work because you'd be hoping to roll maybe 6 movement and you'd roll 3. I mean, that's not a bad thing in itself, it's just a different taste thing.
So obviously there can be a lot of variance in the dice and how they fall. You've got a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 30. We did actually go to the creator and ask for a little bit of input on how that whole part works, and there was a lot of maths that went into making sure that the numbers worked out correctly. And when you look at it, we've all said that our games did add up very, very closely. So the fact that there is that variance in the dice might feel bad at the time, but it doesn't necessarily hamper your chances. Like every game I have played of it, barring one instance where I was a prisoner, I felt like the games were actually like close. Anybody could have won it come those final few turns. The game's kind of balanced in the idea that if you get a 5 or a less, then you get a free card as a result, like a Warden card if you're the Warden, gang card if you're a gang leader.
One of the things that really shines in this game is the smaller the player count, the less relevant the cards are.
Yeah.
I found that in the game where I was playing the Warden, we had quite a big lot, we had a full group for it. And the Warden cards were invaluable. I was rolling awfully the entire game, but I managed to win because
you had good
the
cards.
Warden cards and so many of the players meant that they were, even the niche ones were always going to be relevant.
Yes.
But in the smaller games, rolling low means you're moving less and there are less people, so the niche cards aren't going to play into it.
Like you're right, the more players there are, probably it is a lot better for being a Warden because there's always a bigger chance you can use those cards. It might almost be nice to kind of generalize them a little bit more. Like at least maybe have them apply to 2 different places, for example, or even just change it a little bit depending on how many players there are.
My only other complaint, and complaint is very strong word for this one, it's mainly just me being bad at remembering things. There was a situation where I had a ganger collect an item and then move around quite a lot really early in the game, and he was just in a hiding spot for the next 20 turns.
Yeah.
In game, that's 20 years. And when it came to using him again, I'd forgotten where he'd got the item from.
Oh.
I feel like if there was maybe a reference on it, and then some reference on the locations you can collect them from, that'd have been a bit easier.
Yeah, just to differentiate where you got things from, right?
It didn't necessarily, it wasn't like a make or break moment, but it did change how I was potentially going to play out my turns.
I think that the rules in certain places really could do with being tightened up and kind of explained a little bit better. There are a lot of cases where it's down to the interpretation of the people at the table. And I'm hoping that that gets kind of clarified a bit better by final release, just because there were times where we were sat around the table looking at the book and trying to figure out exactly what it meant. By final release, again, I'm sure that will be absolutely fine. It will be cleared up.
Yeah.
Personally, the one thing I'd like to see maybe added in the future, I don't think it kind of has to be in the base box. I'd like to see the gang leaders get their own special abilities. Like maybe some of them are slightly better at fighting other prisoners, or maybe some of them are better at gathering certain materials. It kind of changes how you play depending on which card you've drawn, and I think that would be quite nice to see as well.
Yeah, it would be an interesting way of doing it, but like you said, I don't think that needs to be the base version.
No, absolutely. I'd like to see it maybe as an expansion in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just go into the basics on it. What's the suggested age for it? What's the recommended number of players? And if you wanted to buy it, how much would it cost you?
So the age range is 10 plus. If you're buying it, it's probably going to be going for 65 plus shipping in dollars.
Yeah.
And the recommended number of players is 3 to 5, but I think you can play from 2 to 6.
What was the best number of players?
Personally, I think the bigger games are better,
Yeah.
but that's because I always like having kind of bringing that diplomatic element into it. When there are 6 people, you can play each other off. But I think that most people will recommend maybe 4 players for this.
And usually, I'm not sure on games which have a low age range like 10+, especially in a game that requires strategy, but considering there's a team mode in this, I think it'd be perfect if you had 2 children, 2 adults, if I had to put those together in teams, or put both adults against both children and watch them suffer.
It's quite a long game, but the actual rules are fairly simple.
Yes, it's actually a really, really good run-in if you want to start getting into strategy games, but you don't want to go just completely balls first on it.
Yeah, it gets you used to the length of the games, and you can kind of just pick it up and play it. Like, theoretically, because overall your grand scheme plan can change at a dime, you could play this for half an hour, go and take a break, come back and continue. As long as the board's not changed around, obviously.
So can you buy this in shops now, or is this a Kickstarter-backed thing for now?
So the game is going to be coming to Kickstarter from the 17th of September.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of AFK Sidequest. If you have, then please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Click that notification bell down below, and a prison escapee with a knife and more good content will be coming in to break into your house. We are going to be doing a full playthrough of this game, so please keep an eye on our channel, and you'll see that coming to you very soon. And don't forget that this game goes live on Kickstarter September the 17th. I've been Rob. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.